Six Rotations, a new weekly show covering everything women's college volleyball, brought to you by SNA Sports, better equipment for a better game. I'm your host, Daniel Gillman, joined by former USC and Texas coach Mick Haley, one of two NCAA volleyball coaches to win championships with multiple schools and lead the USA team in the 2000 Sydney Olympics. And Mick, we're going to bring everything to these women's volleyball fans every week. Tuesday mornings, we're going to be breaking down the polls, the best in the weekend in volleyball. And in this episode, we're going to break down opening weekend intriguement and talk about the Olympics. It was a fantastic start to the month of August. We've got opening day coming up at the end of the month. We will talk to the USA Volleyball assistant coach, Luka Slabe, and the head coach of NC State at the end of this episode. But let's talk a little bit about gold. Mick, it was a golden weekend last week over in Tokyo for the USA team. What does it mean for the sport, and how exciting was it to see them sweep Brazil?
Well, certainly it's the highlight of the Olympics for us volleyball people. We have been working on this for 50 years plus. I can't tell you how many people felt they were attached to this team, and for them to be able to execute and bring that gold home is just almost a lifetime's work for so many people. I can't tell you. It's just, it was exciting. Couldn't go to bed. We were up to one. Congratulations to that team. Congratulations to the coaches. Finally, we've gotten our wish. We got a gold medal.
Yeah, the enjoyment and the emotion from head coach Karch Karai was goosebump filling. And so one of just three teams ever to sweep the gold medal match, first since the mid 80s with China. But this is a NCAA women's volleyball show. And in this episode, we are so excited to bring you the top 5 most intriguing pre-conference tournaments, and then some great standalone matches that will follow through the month of August and September, getting you ready for conference play. Mick is an absolute encyclopedia of volleyball knowledge, one of the true champions of this sport. So I'm really happy to have this platform with him and enable us to give you guys the content that has not really been there over the last few years. Watching the sport rise in the rankings, seeing over 500,000 people watch the Texas-Kentucky championship match back in April on ESPN2. So I'm excited for this fall season, a culmination in Columbus, what should be a fantastic tournament. Finally back to the original format, right back to 64 teams, back to the action on August 27th. And Mick, let's get started with those defending national champs. Kentucky is going to headline our first pre-conference tournament that we're most excited about. And they're taking on a formidable Texas State team in what is my favorite part of these pre-conference tournaments. And that's those early morning games, right? 10:30 a.m. on Friday, the 27th. What a way to wake up on opening day.
Killers for coaches. We hate those things, but they're doing it. And of course, Texas State is formidable. What people don't know is last spring they took on, they played a full conference schedule in the fall, and then in the spring they took on the Big 12 and many schools. I have down here that they played Baylor twice, Texas twice, Kansas, Nebraska, Kansas State, TCU. They have readied themselves for this season. For Kentucky to start with a team like this, they're asking for trouble. But Kentucky doesn't have their lineup set. They don't know who their setter is yet. There are a lot of question marks there.
As a fan, I'm ready for all the trouble that we can be thrown at us. We're going to head over east now from Dayton to Columbia, South Carolina. Another national seed is going to headline our second favorite pre-conference tournament, and that's Washington State in the Carolina Classic. Really looking forward to that early morning West Coast start Saturday between the Cougs and the Panthers. And although this will be the only mention of Rice on this list, Jenny Volpe in her 18th season is known to schedule tough and has 3 of the 8 regional finalists on the slate the next few months. Mick, what intrigues you about this one and the UCF Challenge?
Well, I think with the Carolina Classic, South Carolina thinks they're going to win. Not only the Classic, they think they're going to win the SEC this year. And that's a surprise to a lot of people. But the coaches, the players, they're all excited there. As far as Rice, Nicole Lennon is the name there to watch. And Rice has missed out on that tournament last spring. Just one little slip there, and they didn't get in. they want to come back with that team and show how good they are. So you want to watch these tournaments closely. Both of those teams are critical.
An incredible showing for the ACC in Omaha back in April. And so we talk a little bit about UCF, that UCF Classic coming up next week. We're going to be previewing the AVCA preseason poll and talking about the best transfers and returning seniors. And you can't talk transfers without Russ Rose and Penn State. They've got Georgia Tech, St. John's, and UCF in that little 4-person tournament down in Orlando, adding a couple superstars in Erica Pritchard and Adana Rollins.
Yeah, and they're going to score points now on the left side. That was his primary goal. They do lose a player out of the middle. They had the 2 best middles in the country. One of them decided to go to Pitt. Wow, is that a in-state rivalry that's going to heat up big time there? I think that tournament is going to be a really fun tournament. So UCF did a great job of scheduling. They've got everybody coming to Orlando to play. They get to see the best of the best. And Georgia Tech's got that Brazilian connection. So you don't know what's coming in there. You really have to watch them. But she really has had that team going. And that's another ACC team that you were talking about. So Russ Rose has got his work cut out for him in this opening round. He might have gotten a little tougher group than he wanted here.
Moving into September, we've got a pair of week 2 tournaments that caught your eye. I'm sure that the team out in LA has no bias connected with Mick Haley, but I'm excited for that tournament here with Creighton and you know, you throw in a little bit of extra interest, right, with number 1 or maybe returning number 1. We'll see where Kentucky winds up next week. You've got USC, and Northern Iowa always seems to be a thorn in people's sides early.
These teams have done this, played against each other for the last 8 or 9 years. This has been a continuous schedule for them to play in the first 3 weeks. And invariably, the matches go 5 games. I've never seen a tournament like this where the teams to start the season are so even and everybody's trying to find out about themselves. I tell you, this tournament could end up with 3 teams at 2-1 and 1 team 0-3. And we could have 3 teams looking to come out of there ready to go. Northern Iowa has got a young setter who I got a chance to work with in Croatia a couple of years ago. They've got a ton of young kids, but they're going to get baptized.
Yeah, an early one with Kentucky and Creighton at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. But I think the tournament I'm most excited for is out west. We've got the Utah Classic with the most balanced field in any tournament. Cal Poly coming back from a tournament appearance in 2019, Hawaii, a late addition into that tournament as well with Utah Valley, San Diego, and Utah. There was no Big West season in 2019, but Cal Poly and Hawaii back-to-back seasons in the NCAA tournament, a Utah-San Diego rematch from a couple years ago that should be a lot of fun, and Utah and Cal Poly split a pair of 5-setters in 2019. Mick, as we take a look at the standalone matches here, that tournament will be a lot of fun, as will a couple of these unique standalone matches here. Kentucky and Western Kentucky headlining the exhibition play, right? We don't have to wait too long until volleyball starts. We can get started really early here with a August 19th start with Kentucky and their rivals Western in a rematch of the regional semis.
They do that every year,
yep.
And they do that on purpose. Western Kentucky loves it. Craig says he loves it. I don't know if he really does or not, because Western comes in there ready to make a name for themselves, and I think he wants that intensity. Craig wants that intensity from Western to build his team, but he's got these new kids this year, and he's got to be careful. So it's going to be an interesting exhibition match, and a lot of people are going to take a lot away from it.
And then the fun gets ratcheted up in Big Ten country, right? Yassiana Presley's coming back. We'll talk a lot about her and who else Baylor adds next week in our second episode. But those Bears head up to Madison and take on Minnesota on the 27th and Wisconsin on the 28th. Just sit me on a couch those 2 days and get me ready for all the volleyball we can handle. Ohio State and Washington also on the 28th. Of course, that Columbus Final Four is going to be real interesting and intriguing for those fans over in Ohio State and Jen Flim Oldenburg's young crew.
Yeah, those 2 matches are interesting, especially you mentioned Presley. So where do you think, Daniel, she's going to play?
I think they move her to right side. Yeah, that's what I think.
See, I think that will be very interesting because that takes her out of the passing.
Yep.
And if that takes her out of the passing, then we might see a whole different Baylor team, but they're only going to play a 5-1 if they do that. So if they only play a 5-1, you're going to have Williams on the bench, I believe, not starting as setter. This would be her third year or maybe her third semester. I'm not sure how that went. She transferred in fall.
Who knows?
Yeah. So that's interesting. I want to watch that. I want to see what Minnesota does with their left side, losing Rollins, who comes in there. I think they've got two capable players there, but Pittman is the big person that Minnesota has to fill her spot. And she was really good in the middle. So I like that. Washington's got everybody back and they're huge, but guess what? Ohio State has almost everybody back and they're huge. So that match is pivotal. You want to watch that. The court's going to be very small when they put all 12 players out there.
Yeah, I mean, Landfair jumps out of a gym, but Schaffmaster with Minnesota didn't quite utilize those middles throughout Big Ten play last year, and it kind of bit her a little bit in the tournament. Let's look at a couple more standalone matches here with Texas against Stanford, Nebraska at Creighton. A couple minor rivalries there, right? Texas and Stanford go way back, and Nebraska and Creighton are right down the road.
Yeah, I think that Texas-Stanford matchup is really significant because they do rival each other. And as much as Stanford talks about what they do academically, Texas has good academics too. They want to win that. I'm liking Texas in that one, but Stanford's playing the toughest schedule. So that'll be interesting to watch that.
Yeah, Stanford's going all over the place, up to Oregon, down to Austin, out to Gainesville, as we take a look at our second slate of standalone matches here in the middle of September. Possible top 5 battle going on with Kentucky and Wisconsin. Got to keep an eye on the WCC. We have to give the WCC some love as Pepperdine makes an appearance hosting Washington. And then Florida and Baylor will go back to back on September 10th and 11th, as will Oregon out in Big Ten country as well against Penn State and Minnesota.
Yeah, those are all important matches. I really like a couple of those matches to see where people are playing people. Baylor, Florida really intrigues me. Florida's got everybody back except their opposite, the big left-hander. So I think they'll bring the Puerto Rican kid in that position. She's a real talent, not quite as big, so they'll have to play a little bit better defense. Oregon, Penn State would be interesting. Oregon, you haven't seen because of a lot of different things, but they have some really good young players out there. Penn State will now have a chance to have played a couple of weekends. That should be a good battle. I like that a whole lot. Washington, Pepperdine, that's at Pepperdine. When I played there as the Texas coach, they mooed the whole 5 games in that small gym, and we did not get out of there. Nina had us, got us there, and we had to go to Stanford the next night to play. So I think Washington better beware of the Pepperdine crowd and the support they have for their team there.
And then we bookend this episode. We start with another bluegrass battle. We end with it as well as Kentucky heads to Louisville on September 15th. Kentucky has a loaded schedule. They're not returning all of their starters, right? That combination of Curry and Lilly. We're going to talk a ton about that next week and really go into detail on which players are using the COVID year of eligibility and which one are not. But we do have a fantastic conversation that we want to play for you guys. It's a little outdated, right? We talked to Luka Slabe a week ago. So before the USA team went on that incredible run right before the quarterfinal match, but excited to bring that to you coming up right now. Joined now all the way across the world in Tokyo by the USA Women's Volleyball assistant coach, Luka Slabe. Luka, thank you so much for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you for having me, gentlemen. I'm happy to be here.
No, we're happy to have you and recording this on the morning before the quarterfinal match against the Dominican Republic, an exciting one against Italy to end pool play. But I want to know about, the Olympic Village, the entire experience from you, just the basic questions to start it off. What's it been like for you and what's it been like for the team?
Tokyo as a city is amazing. We've been here numerous times before. Village is amazing. It's beautiful, very well organized, clean. Japanese always organize things extremely well. So no complaints. Food is great. Experience in general is amazing. athletes, staff, whoever is staying in this village is very compliant when it comes to masks and hand sanitizing. So far, so good, smoothly. But again, we don't get to mingle a ton. We train, we rest, we prepare, and we repeat this every day.
The level of competition has definitely been the highest and everything that the fans here in America could ask for. But as the years that you've spent as the assistant coach there and now as the head coach for NC State women's volleyball have kind of passed by in a year now, what's been the biggest difference that you've seen from the competition at the international level and at the NCAA level?
You know, I was brought up, I played volleyball, I coached men's volleyball until a few years ago, and it's the same thing. When you compare men's collegiate and international, in college, of course, there's more errors. International players are just better, stronger. Um, it's a game of the errors, and it's way more of those in NCAA. That's the biggest difference. And internationally, some of the players are more physical, uh, but collegiate kids, they catch up later on when they, go into these international waters. They join USA Pipeline, they get there. But when we're comparing players of age 18, 19, 20, 21 in US and in Europe or Brazil or Asia, they just play way more volleyball. They train way more than we do. So they're a little bit ahead in terms of development. But then we catch up, and here we are playing for the gold Olympic medal against same players.
Luka, does that mean players like Plummer and Redkey and those kinds of players really have to play in the leagues for several years before they really get their stripes to be able to be counted on?
It sounds like that's been the case. There's only a handful of players in last, let's say, 15, 20 years that were done with college and really impacted. The very next year, the first summer, they started for the women's national team. So that tells you that there is time needed to go and play against these best pressure, just level where there's no error, where people don't let you get away with making an average play. And once you understand that, once you raise the level of the game, then some of the players, Mika, you just mentioned, of course, can compete. So I think it is important and sometimes necessary for these players to play a year, 2, 3 to catch up and then be on the top-notch level that they need to be to win medals.
So probably it was exceptional when Logan Tom joined the national team as a 17-year-old and was able to play in her first Olympics in 2000 at, I believe, 19. Pretty amazing.
That's unbelievable. And I think Karch and I, we had that discussion maybe on our way to Tokyo, or maybe just before we left. Like, I'm like, hey, who are, let's say, 5? And like we were doing, and Logan was like, even before she was done with Stanford, she was already like having a huge impact on the USA women's national team. So just a few at the age that Logan was 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, there's some international stars already. Italy, Serbia, China, they have some stars that are already performing at the highest level. But the reason is they train all the time. There's no restrictions like we have in terms of 20 hours, 8 hours, nothing, dead period. So it's very different setup around the world.
Yeah, that's big. I think a lot of people have kind of been asking me, where is Dana Redkey and why aren't some of the stars that we've seen in the last couple of years making that transition? But as you see on TV, the studs, the superstars out there, the American, starters are the ones that have been earning and getting up there in their years and in their experience. Talk to me about your experience a little bit, right? Making the move from BYU men's volleyball, getting that offer from Karch to join the team. What's that story been like? And what's your last couple of years, in the move cross country to Raleigh been like for you?
Business as per usual. As a coach, you're doing stuff like that, and you're if you're lucky, you have family that supports you at doing that. I moved my family from Europe to Utah in 2015, spent there 3 years, knowing that eventually I need and I want to move on. And that unique opportunity to work for Karch came across, and I didn't hesitate. I'm like, come on, I was watching Karch live when he played in Italy. I was 13, 14, Slovenia, It's right there, neighboring country, Italy, to Ravenna, 3 hour, 4 hour drive. Here we go. Let's go watch Karch on Sunday. So Karch was always like somebody you want to be around, you want to work with. And I had this opportunity, and there's some other amazing staff members here. So life's been really good with USA Volleyball. And then, of course, one thing led to another, and the opportunity came across to become a head coach of NC State. At the time, thinking that Olympics are going to happen in 2020, and that would be a smooth transition straight from Tokyo in 2020 to Raleigh, but that was postponed for a year. So it's going to be it's going to be a very interesting, I would say, how this is going to play out in a week or so when we get to leave the Village Olympics, and I go immediately to preseason in Raleigh.
So one of the questions that everybody keeps talking about your plans for the Olympics and how that all turned out is you can pretty much see where everybody would play and who would come in for whom and those kinds of things. But no one has an answer for what would happen if both setters went down. Did you have a plan for that? And you must have had a plan, but would you be willing to share it?
We've talked about it already. And, as we know, Justine, our libero, she was a setter, a really good setter. And probably we would move one of the outsides to be a libero, and Justine would set for us. There's one option.
That's head coach's
go.
planning. Yeah, head coach's planning, right?
Yeah. You have to. I mean, you have to, unfortunately, but we don't stop fighting. We stay in this fight, and we'll be here until we're like asked to leave. So we're not rushed.
That's the attitude. That's the attitude.
Yeah, great look inside the mind right there. I do want to know if you had a piece of advice for any, middle school, high school, college-aged volleyball players that are watching now and watching Annie Drews and Micah Hancock out there just playing their hearts out. What piece of advice would you give them to try to get to that next level, get to that national level with the amount of practice that is allowed in America compared to in other countries?
Yeah. The biggest one is build all-around game. That's another difference between college volleyball, women's college volleyball, club volleyball, and the rest of the world, including men's volleyball in US, collegiate. Substitution rules. Okay. You have more subs available in US than anywhere else. That means that coaches, we can create systems where opposite never hits back row, where setter never blocks, where outside hitter never gets to play 6 rotations. And that's the biggest disadvantage when you're comparing players that are coming in USA pipeline and players that are coming to Italy pipeline or Russia or China. Kids play all around game because they have to. Substitution doesn't allow coaches just to put in 3 DSs to do this and that, and then outside and that's going to do this and that. So invest in your all-around game. Even though you're a middle blocker, you got to be able to pass short serve. You got to be able to set the ball when it comes to you. You got to be able to use a tomahawk on a pancake. Don't limit your skill. Try to expand your skill as much as you can. That's going to take you long ways. If we see players that read well and they can move well, no matter what the position, and you can be tall and all this stuff, but if you cannot take care of business, it's going to be really hard for you. So just all around game is everything.
All right. Hope you guys brought your pen and pencil today. 2 fun questions for you here at the end, just about the Olympics overall. Everyone talking on TikTok, on Twitter about those cardboard beds. What are they like? Are they comfortable?
They're comfortable, just like any other bed, make no noises. They're sturdy, and I'm sitting on one right here, and it's all good. And I know our girls were like jumping and dancing, 3 or 4 of them, and there were like some wrestling guys or rugby guys throwing themselves on these beds, and all good, still here.
Never a doubt with the phenomenal engineering out there. And then, your fellow countrymen, right? Luka Doncic is out there balling out with the Slovenian national team. Have you run into him? Did you find a way to, meet up?
Believe it or not, our staff and Slovenia basketball national team, we eat in the same area. I guess we decided we're going to be right here. So we sit one next to each other, like, I don't know, 20 feet away, maybe not even that. So we're together. We've been together for 10 days plus. So yeah, I come across a lot of my countrymen here, and we've been pretty successful, Slovenia.
Great. Well, lots of hours of difference. So we really appreciate you being able to wake up early and jump on with us. Luka, thank you so much for joining us.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. Great talking to you. And hi, back to US.
There we go. He's Luka Slabe, the assistant coach for the U.S. women's national team. Huge thank you once again to Luka Slabe, and a congratulations to that entire team. Karch Karai was screaming with his interview with Haley Washington at the end. Well worth staying up for. We're so happy that you are with us for this episode. We can't wait to bring you all the coverage next week throughout the rest of the fall. As next episode, we break down the first poll of the season, the AVCA preseason coaches poll, along with which top seniors are coming back using that extra year of eligibility, what transfers caught Mick's eye, maybe a couple predictions around the different conferences as we are nearing opening day, August 27th. Thank you so much for watching. Just tell one friend about this show and help grow the sport one share at a time. Click subscribe and tune in next week. For Mick Haley, I'm Daniel Gillman. This is Six Rotations.